It's 2007. Ex-musician and movie actor Chris McLean is hired to host the most outstanding reality show, Total Drama Island. After a brief introduction of the camp, we meet the contestants who are divided in two teams, the Screaming Gophers and the Killer Bass. Now, every week, the contestants must compete in a challenge. The team who loses has to send a member home. The first challenge, everyone has to jump off a cliff in a shark-free zone. For each member that jumps off the cliff, the team gets a box of materials that they will later use to build a hot tub. The team with the best hot tub wins the challenge and gets to keep it. Unfortunately for the Killer Bass, DJ and Courtney decide to quit, and unfortunately for Harold, he decided to jump. On the other hand, all the Screaming Gophers except Beth manage to jump off the cliff. So they get more materials, a wagon, and they eventually end up winning the first challenge. Now the Killer Bass were ready to send Courtney home for her cowardness, but Ezekiel decided to intervene.
Guys are much stronger and better at sports than girls are.
That's how he ended up being the first boot. Episode 3 opens up with a sudden wake-up of the contestants, a 20-kilometer run, and a grandiose feast. But none of these things were actually part of the challenge, just tools to make them sleepy. What's the actual challenge? The contestant who stays awake the longest wins. Now during the Awakeathon, Beth, Heather, and Lindsay formed the first alliance while Trent and Gwen get closer. After hours and hours of sleep deprivation, Gwen wins the challenge, which brings another win to the Screaming Gophers and sends the Killer Bass to elimination ceremony. Now earlier that day, Heather actually stole Ava's MP3 player. This made her burst in rage and gave every single Killer Bass a reason to vote her off. Episode 4 opens up with a Dodgeball challenge. Duncan decides to go directly to sleep and let the others handle the game, which they completely fail to do so. So the Killer Bass wake Duncan up to help them win the challenge. While at the elimination ceremony, the Screaming Gophers decide to eliminate Noah since he refused to help them. Episode 5 is a talent contest. While both teams prepare their artistic numbers, Lindsay and Tyler end up making out, while our boy Cody shoots his first shot with Gwen. It's an air ball. Now during the contest, the Screaming Gophers bring up these three. One sings a song, the other shows his good looks, while Heather reads Gwen's diary on live TV. The Killer Bass? They start pretty bad as DJ messes up his moment and Bridget ends up puking everywhere while hand walking, but they're saved by the team's MVP, Harold. Although Heather is the most likely to be eliminated, she convinces Beth, Lindsay, Izzy, and Owen to vote for Justin. In episode 6, the contestants have to spend a night in the woods and then come back to the camp, but Katie and Sadie get lost in the woods. Because of them, the Killer Bass lose the challenge, so Katie is sent home. Episode 7 opens up with the contestants talking about their fears. Rookie mistake. Because the next day, Chris makes them face their fears during the challenge. Heather gets to face a sumo fighter, Beth gets covered in worms, Sadie and Lindsay get bad haircuts, Owen and Izzy fly in an airplane, Harold is attacked by ninjas, LaShawn is chased by a giant chef bug, Bridget is left alone in the woods, Gwen is buried alive, Trent is chased by a mime, DJ has to pet a snake, Cody has to defuse a trash bomb, Duncan has to hug a Celine Dion standee, Jeff is chased by a hail cloud, Tyler has to face some chickens but fails, and Courtney has to jump in a pool with green jelly but fails as well. So the Killer Bass loses and sends Tyler home. In episode 8, the contestants have to paddle their canoes to Boney Island, cross the island, light a rescue fire, and then come back to the camp. Now Chris warns them to not take any object home as they'll be cursed by the island, but Beth doesn't hear that. Now once again, the Screaming Gophers lead most of the challenge, but instead of keeping her mouth shut, Izzy suggests to the other team that DJ could basically work as a boat engine. So the Killer Bass win, and Izzy is sent? Huh?
Izzy, we know you are down there. You are under arrest. You'll never get me alive!
In episode 9, the contestants are divided into deers and hunters. Each hunter has to shoot the other team's deer using paintballs. During the challenge, Beth ends up fighting with Heather and breaking the alliance, while poor Cody is ambushed by a bear In the end, the Screaming Gophers lose the challenge and send him home. Now episode 10 opens up with Duncan doing his routine push-ups, but then he mistakenly sniffs one of Harold's panties. So the Killer Bass guys give Harold a hard time for letting his underwear everywhere, but he denies his fault. Now for the challenge, each team has to cook a 3-course meal that will be judged by Chris. Besides helping the guys prank Harold, Jeff also gets closer to Bridget until he says this.
You look good when you're cooking dinner. Kinda like my friend Evan's really hot mom.
Excuse me?
But the Screaming Gophers, they lock Heather in the fridge. Best decision ever. But they also let Owen guard the food. Worst decision ever. In the end, the Gophers lost again. But although Owen ate their food, they discovered that Beth took the totem from Boney Island, which might have been the source for all their previous bad luck. So Beth goes home. In episode 11, Chris noticed a lot of fights between the contestants. Did he try to end the conflict? No. He made a building trust challenge to profit from it. The result? Gwen's panties appear on live TV, Trent gets poisoned, and Jeff loses DJ's bunny. Now to Courtney's surprise, Duncan finds another bunny for DJ to make him feel better. In the end, the Killer Bass lose, and they finally sent Sadie home. The most boring first generation contestant. Episode 12 brings a plot twist. Chef is left in charge of the contestants. He explains that the last one who drops out of his boot camp wins the challenge. So he makes them go through the most extreme challenges. Now, Duncan being Duncan, he pushes Chef to the limit. So he ends up alone in the boathouse. But Courtney, she brings him some food at the boathouse. Now after a brief discussion of criticizing each other's personality, they agree to go steal some better tasting food. This experience lightens some emotions between these two. Thus, they end up kissing. But the whole thing was seen by Harold. So to get revenge on Duncan, he decides to rig the votes and have Courtney eliminated this episode. Episode 13 is all about extreme challenges. The contestants have to skydive, moose ride, and even go through a mud skiing obstacle course, which gave us this legendary moment. But during the episode, Gwen and Bridget discover a secret love letter. So they try to find out who sent it. Trent or Jeff? The answer? Neither. It was Harold. And the letter was written for Lashana. Unfortunately, their romance is briefly ended as Harold is eliminated. In the next episode, the contestants compete in a boys versus girls gross food eating challenge. After a few rounds of heavy puking, the guys win and get to live in a 5-star resort for the next week. But when they come back the next episode, the teams eventually merge. Now before the challenge starts, 2 eliminated contestants come back in the game, Izzy and Ava. Unfortunately for Ava, none of the remaining contestants want her on the island. So after the Wheel of Misfortune challenge, she's sent home again. In episode 16, the contestants have to look for keys that open Chris's chests. One of the chests has an immunity card in it. Now during the challenge, Trent and Gwen finally have their first kiss. But Heather sees that. Before you know it, she kisses Trent in front of Gwen and destroys their new romance. Heartbroken, Gwen tells Lashana, who tells everybody else. Since Heather gets immunity, Trent ends up being eliminated, but not before everyone else discovers that it was Heather's plan all along. In episode 17, the contestants have to hide from Chef and his water gun. In the meantime, DJ, Jeff, Duncan, and Owen formed the Guys' Alliance.
A dude's alliance. I love it. It's so manly. Yeah. Come here. Mwah.
At the elimination ceremony, all the Alliance members decide to vote off Bridget. All except Jeff, which leaves the boys a bit unhappy. In episode 18, the contestants have to build their own bicycle and finish an obstacle course with it. Now Heather convinces Lindsay to help her during the challenges, and she successfully wins immunity. But Lindsay is up for elimination, so she begs Heather to give her the immunity. When Heather refuses, Lindsay figures out that the others were right to hate her, so she gives her a big and detailed description of her feelings. feelings, but still, she gets eliminated and ends up being the only contestant personally escorted by Chris on the boat. Episode 19 opens up with the contestants watching a horror movie. But when they finish the movie, they see Chef and Chris dashing on the boat and leaving them behind. The reason? A psycho killer was apparently on the loose. Now, was it all Chris's plan to scare the contestants and hold a horror-themed challenge? Yes. Did a real-life psycho killer actually show up? Also yes. Fortunately, Gwen hit him with some Karate Kid moves and made him drop this line.
Ow! Oh, that was totally uncalled for. Man, I am so out of here.
Unfortunately for DJ, he's the one eliminated. In episode 20, each contestant has to catch a wild animal and bring it back to the camp. During the challenge, Izzy shoots Heather with a tranquilizer and ends up being eliminated. Episode 21 is the Tri-Arm Triathlon. Basically, the remaining contestants are divided into teams of 2. Each team has to perform challenges while being handcuffed together. Surprisingly, all teams get closer, even Owen and Heather, who get to intimately know each other.
Owen is revolting. If I make it out of this garbage heap alive, I will issue a restraining order on his oversized butt. No offense.
None taken.
At the end, Duncan and Lashana win immunity, while Jeff is sent home. Why? He was too popular. A bit unfair, but not nearly as unfair as the next episode. Apparently, the eliminated contestants didn't go home. Instead, they ended up in a luxury resort called Playa de Losers. In this episode, they have one simple job: vote off one of the remaining contestants. But instead of voting Heather, they vote Lashana by mistake.
That's 6 votes, Lashana.
In episode 23, the island gets flooded, so the remaining contestants have to survive on their own. Duncan gets a bow and arrows. Owen grows a beard and creates Mr. Coconut, and they all survive in a treehouse. At the end of the episode, no one is eliminated, except Mr. Coconut.
I will remember you.
Who eventually gets brutally chopped by Chef. Now in the next episode, the final 4 are transported in the middle of the woods while sleeping. The challenge? Get back to the camp. Here, they're divided into 2 teams.
Delinquent and Chubby. Team 2, Grim and Grimmer. Everything you need is in these bags.
During the night, the teams end up sleeping together, and Heather steals Duncan's map. When Gwen and Heather get back first, they decide to eliminate Duncan, since he's the biggest threat. Episode 25 is the semifinale. Owen, Gwen, and Heather have to complete dares made by the previous eliminated contestants. Here, Gwen and Owen strike a pact and ally against Heather. The main condition? If Gwen wins, she'll split the money with Owen. But to their surprise, Heather keeps up pretty well, until she has to shave her hair, because then she does this. So she gets both eliminated and a chopped haircut. Now the next episode often gets forgotten. Episode 25.5. Here, Chris recaps the whole season and shows several audition tapes. In the final episode, we have Gwen versus Owen competing in an obstacle race. Here we see most of the contestants cheering for Owen as he plans to throw a big party with the prize money. Now regardless of the ending, all the contestants still get to throw a party, up until Chris exposes his last trick. In the contract, there's a clause that says the winner must return the $100,000 prize and all the campers have to compete once again, this time for $1 million. But in the process, the suitcase gets lost and some of them are invited to compete once again for a new season called Total Drama Action.